looking at the eyes. And it was like,
Veena madam? Madam, you are back? Veena madam?
yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
I thought I was lost in between.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You have the rights now.
Okay. Okay. So till 1 year, it was very normal, and he was. They noticed that he was not looking at the eyes. When other cousins or other people came to their home, they also noticed that he was not interacting with the peer group. And he always prefers to play a lot. He was not interested in allowing any person, including his mother, to play with him. And he was more occupied by looking into his fingers, moving his fingers, enjoying seeing them. So these were the major concerns of parents. And they obviously they will go to a pediatrician. And from the pediatrician, they were referred to a speech language pathologist. So once they got to see the speech language pathologist, they were hearing the term autism spectrum disorder for the first time in their life. So it was like a trauma for them, and their major concern was like he have a delay in speech and language development. That means though he developed his babbling, he was not able to produce his first word. Even though he has produced his first word, he was not consistently using it. The next point was like he was not mingling with others, and he had some difficulty with sleeping. Sleep disturbances were there. He was not having food like a normal child. He was a picky eater, and some of the words he have acquired, and later on they feel like he was not adding more words to his vocabulary, and he is not communicating to the parents, his needs. So these were the major parental concerns that were raised by Nikhil's parents. So then they heard the term autism spectrum disorders. As I have said earlier, it's an umbrella term. So till 2013, it was DSM-4 we have followed, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. So in Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, this autism spectrum disorder was again divided into, it was called pervasive developmental disorder, and it was again divided into autistic disorder, Asperger, childhood disintegrative disorder, Rett's, and PDD and NOS. But by the commencement of Diagnostic and Statistical Manual in 2013, every pervasive developmental disorder has come under the umbrella term of autism spectrum disorder. So now we don't have a distinction like Asperger, Rett's, or CDD. We call every pervasive developmental disorder as an autism spectrum disorder. So now we'll be looking into what are the major features or major signs of autism spectrum disorder. So from Nikhil's story itself, it's clear that he was not communicating, he was not interacting with others, and he is showing some amount of unusual behaviors. Okay. So autism spectrum disorders has major difficulty in communication, basically interacting with communicating needs or wants or emotions with a communication partner. It can be mother, extended family members, everyone. So, and they have a difficulty in social interaction and they have some restricted repetitive behaviors. So, as you have said in the intro, autism is seeing the world from a different perspective. And they have a deficit in social interaction, interacting with another person. They have a difficulty in communication and restricted repetitive behaviors. So we'll see what is a community and what is the prevalence of autism. So in 2000, it was identified as 1 in 150. But as time goes on, and in 2018, the recent CDC's Chapter 6 shows that it is 1 in 44. So one child in 44 live birth has been identified as having autism spectrum disorder. So what is the time in which we can identify them as having autism spectrum disorders? So it's usually till 1 year of age. Sorry. Usually till 1 year of age, everything will be just like a typically developing child to the parents. But for a professional, there are some differences. Okay, so it's a since it is a spectrum, it has got a severe end and it has got a milder end. And it has got another purview, like it is called a high functioning autism is also there. So it's a spectrum, it's a range. It can from a severe to a mild range. So now we are looking more into the communication aspect. So what do you mean by communication? Can anyone from the crowd answer? What do you mean by communication? No answers? Is anyone leaving any comments on chat box? I'm not able to see the chat box.
It's a process of transferring messages.
It's a process of an exchange of idea. It's an exchange of emotions. So it's an exchange of information. Trading of information is happening when we are communicating. So why do we need to communicate? Why we have to communicate with another person?
Yes, ma'am.
Why we have to communicate?
To express our thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, to express our thoughts, needs. Like if I want water and if I'm not asking water, will I get? If I'm a small baby, my parents might give me. But when I am an elder one and a grown up one, so if I'm not expressing my needs and wants, I will not get things done. So it's a means of expressing our needs, thoughts, and emotions. So for a communication to happen, we need a speaker and a listener. And they should have a common ground of knowledge. Okay, what the speaker is telling, the listener should understand, and the listener and the speaker should have the same ground of knowledge that, okay, they are exchanging the same ideas. So through we can communicate by using our speech, we can communicate using language, and even non-verbally also we can communicate, right? We can point to things which we want and we can get. So that are the different types of communication. So what happens is in individuals, so every behavior, be it crying, be it laughing, everything is a communication. So small kids, how do they communicate? Usually they communicate using pre-intentional behaviors like crying, weaning, or frowning. So when they are happy, they will laugh. When they are wet, they will cry. When they are hungry, they will cry. So by 3 months of age and all, the parents, usually mothers, can differentiate. It's a cry for hunger, it's a cry for pain, it's a cry for discomfort. So that's called differential cry. So these all will emerge. So these are all in pre-intentional behaviors. From pre-intentional behaviors, usually typically developing children will move to more conventional form of communication. That can be by using a language, even an abstract symbol, concrete symbols. So So this gradation of communication is not actually happening in the case of a child with autism spectrum disorder. What happens is like they communicate through pre-intentional or unconventional form of communication, and they do not develop a communication intent. So why I need to communicate? If I cry, if I say, if I point, I can get the things. So that type of intention will not be there in a child who is having autism spectrum disorder. So the main functions of our communication are like labeling, expressing, answering questions. So these are the major functions of communication. And what happens when a child is not able to express his feelings? What they will do? Usually, suppose think your mouth is shut and you're not able to communicate, or you are not able to express your feelings. What you will do?
By body languages.
No, your body language also nobody is understanding. What you will do? What do you
You
do?
show some signs of irritation like
All of us will show the signs of frustration, right? So no one is understanding me, what I am saying or what I need, I'm not getting it across. So that's communication breakdown. So these children with autism spectrum disorders can have communication breakdown. So most of the time parents misinterpret it as temper tantrums. My child is showing so much temper tantrum. It's because the child is not able to communicate his needs. That's why the child is showing frustrations or communication breakdowns. So since they don't have a communication intent, they are not able to point to the thing they want. That's the reason why this communication breakdown happens and communication is impaired. So now just as now somebody has said like body language or body postures, all these are gestures. So these are the first thing, gestures are the first thing which develop in the way of communication development. So we can have pointing. Okay. So it's like we can point to a thing which we need, and we can point to a situation wherein we want to share an information. So these two type of pointing, it's called proto-imperative pointing and proto-declarative pointing. Both these pointing is absent in children with autism spectrum disorder, wherein some children with autism spectrum disorder, they tend to show proto-imperative point, that is pointing for indicating a need, that too at a later stage. But this type of pointing usually develops by around 9 to 12 months, 9 to 18 months of age. The pointing skills or gesture development will be happening. So for the first sign, that's a pointing is a first sign of intentionality. That means if I want something, I'm doing this and I'm getting it. That is an intention to communicate. So that type of intentionality is not present in children with autism spectrum disorders usually. But at the later stages of life, with the intervention, there are high chances that they can develop this intentionality and they can develop communication skills. So 0 to 18 months, that's a time period where we can clearly identify children as having autism spectrum disorder. They tend to avoid eye contact and they show some sensory issues and all. Most of the time, there will be a social smile which is lacking in these children. So I hope most of you have seen small babies. When you smile at them, what they will do? The babies beyond 4 months of age, 4 to 5 months of age, they will smile at you back, right? Most of the time they will do. So that's called the social smile. That type of social reciprocity will not be there in children with autism spectrum disorder. They will be interested more towards an inanimate objects rather than what a human face. They have the least interest towards a human face. If we hold something in our hand and the child with autism is approaching us, they will be looking more towards an object which is kept in our hand rather than our face. They have more affinity towards inanimate objects. And they lack imitation skills. Like by 1.5 and from 18 months, another important point is happening. That is, till 18 months, some of the babies might be producing 1 to 2 words and words like that. So by 18 months of age, there are chances that they can be have a regression in all the aspects of socialization, communication. So after 18 months, some of the babies show a regression, or they will not be producing the same words which they usually produced during the first year. And that's a point when all the blame comes into MMR vaccine. It's just a coincidence that usually MMR vaccine is taken at 18 months of age, and most of the parents report that after taking the vaccine, the child is not picking up, or the child is showing more signs of autism spectrum disorder. No, it's not like that. They have a usual tendency to show a regression at 18 months, or sometimes they may show a regression even at the 2 year of age. So that's the reason why many research have been conducted on the relationship between MMR vaccine and regression, which is shown in the 18 months of age for children with autism spectrum disorder. It's just a coincidence, but usually in the 18 months of age, there is a sign of regression in the communication aspect. And by 1.5 after 18 months and all, imitation skills will be lacking because they are least interested towards a human interaction. They obviously lack imitation skills, and sometimes we feel like they are least concerned about the people around them. So somebody is entering a room, they might just look a glance at them and they will be in their own world. So they have a reduced social awareness, and most of the time this is the period 1.5 to 4 years is a period wherein more peers pop in and they start to play with them. So that's the point when they notice that they're not interacting with the peers, or they're not able to engage in a play, in a enjoyable play. They're not sharing things. This is the point wherein most of the kids, when they get a new toy, what they will do, they will run towards you, they will show you the toy, and they will start to say about it. But but for a child with autism spectrum disorder, usually it will not be that type of sharing of enjoyment will not be there most of the time. And beyond 4 years, most of the time they treat people like objects, and they prefer to play alone, and they have a restriction in showing physical affection. So these are the major communication aspects which we can see. Some children will be new if they are having a typical vocabulary, or if they are having vocabulary. There are chances that they may show a presence of echolalia. Echolalia means it's just like an echoing. So if I ask you what's your name, they may ask you back what's your name in the same intonation pattern. That's called echolalia. So there are different type of echolalias are there, and they might be using atypical vocabulary. Means they have an interest towards one particular type of vocabulary. Some of the children are more interested towards saying the names of cars, car companies. Some of them have that type of interest towards atypical vocabulary, and babbling, which is seen in the 6 months of age, will be less. And some of them have a hyperlexic component, which means they may read everything, but what they have read, the understanding of what they have read will not be there. So it's just another presentation of communication aspect. So now comes our social interaction. So social interaction usually begins with the period of joint attention. Joint attention means when when a small baby, when we are taking up a small baby and we are showing them, look, there's a crow over there. Suddenly the child will turn his head and he will look towards the crow. So that is called a joint attention. That is called responding to joint attention. That type of joint attention, or a referral to a third object, seeing a third object from a referent, will not be there. So they have a reduced joint attention. They have a difficulty in initiating this joint attention and even the triadic attention. So this figure, you can see that the parent is pointing to the hen which is over there, and the child is able to turn his head and look at the information which is out there. So this type of joint attention, even initiating joint attention and responding to joint attention will not be there. They have a lack of imitation skills. They lack sharing. They lack turn taking, which is there, which should be there when they move into a peer interaction. And the third one is the presence of restricted repetitive behaviors. So there are many types of restricted repetitive behaviors. One is a lower order and higher order is there. So it includes self-injurious behaviors, object stereotype, and unusual object use. So if we give them an object, there are high chances that they will look through the object like this, or they may Google the object. They may, instead of using it functionally, they may tap the object. So these type of unusual object use will be there. Sometimes what happens is they show a whole body rocking motion. They will be moving front and back. Whole body rocking motion will be there. They have a habit of self-spinning, spinning on their legs, and they have a habit of toe walking. That is, without holding his toe with feet on the ground, he might be doing like this and he might be walking. So toe walking will be there. So all these repetitive behaviors will be there. Sometimes they may show lining of objects. Most of the children with autism spectrum disorders which comes to our department shows this lining of objects. They will line up blocks, pens, whatever they get, they will line it up. That shows that they are not using the object in a proper manner. And sometimes these children have an insistence on sameness. That means if they have a routine, like if they want to keep the pen on the pen box, the pen should be there on the pen box every time. If we change the curtains in the intervention room, they won't accept it. They want that same curtain. If we change the seating arrangement, they won't accept it. They want the same seating arrangement. So some of us, even the typically developing, so-called typically developing, will also show the same thing. Like we also have some type of insistence, but we know how to regulate ourselves. We know how to monitor our things, our engagements, and do accordingly. So these children with autism spectrum disorders have a compulsion towards insistence. Insistence and sameness will be there. Sometimes what happens is they have a habit of holding some objects in their hand. Some of the children usually show like they may keep a toy in their hand throughout the time, and they will not throw it away. So that type of insistence will also be there. So some of the behaviors like switching on and off, repetitively they will do switch on and off, and they show some whole body rocking, spinning, hand flapping. Some of the children will do it, this type of hand flapping when they are excited. That will also be there, and they have a more affinity towards spinning objects. That can be anything, even a fan, even a pen, they will spin it and they will see. Even toys, if we take a toy car, what they will do is they will do a functional play. That means using the car, they will make it ride, and after riding, they will turn it upside down, and they are more interested towards looking at the spinning wheels. Sometimes they will do it like when they are riding the toy, their eyes will be fixed more on the wheels. We will feel like the child is playing with the toy, but actually they are seeing the spinning wheels. Okay, so that type, and sometimes these children, what they will do is they will go to washing machine. Friend of washing machine is there, no? So they will go near it and they will love to see the spinning of that particular clothes over there. So anything that is spinning is of interest towards them. Okay. And next is the play behaviors. So this is the area wherein these children with autism spectrum disorders show a remarkable difference. That means how do you think play has a role in the child development?
Yes, of course, ma'am.
Yes, we all learn different things through play, right? So even the language development has got a significant impact on the play. So there are different types of play. Like it can be onlooker play. They can see what others are doing. It's in solitary play where they alone will be play. So solitary play is the type of play which is usually seen in children with autism spectrum disorders. So they will not allow other individuals. It can be peers, it can be parents, it can be immediate family members, anybody. They will not allow them to come into that circle. Okay, so they have their own type of play, like lining of objects, seeing the deals of cards, or even mouthing of the objects. So that type of solitary play they might have developed and they are enjoying that. So other kids, they may, typically developing kids may be engaged in associative play or a cooperative play. But most of the time, solitary play or being an unoccupied one or an onlooker play is seen in children with autism spectrum disorder. And once after intervention, we used to say some amount of parallel play also there in children. So there is an evolution for play. So what happens is during, hope you all know the Piaget stage of sensory motor development. Piaget stage of cognitive development, right? So during the first 2 years, that is during the sensory motor period, most of the kids will do sensory motor play, like banging of objects, they will explore it. They can explore it in many ways. If they can touch it, feel it, even they will do mouthing, that's all accepted in a exploration phase. And sensory motor period extends to 2 years. So that's the time when the kids start to explore it by banging. So that's also accepted. Beyond 2 years, if the child is doing that type of sensory motor play, then that's an indication that he is stuck somewhere. There is a risk for having autism spectrum disorder. So after 2 years or by 2 years of age, most of the kids will develop for combinational play, pretend play. So what happens is the kids will take dolls and they will play as if they are feeding doll, bathing the doll. So that type of pretend play or imaginative play will not be there in a child with autism spectrum disorders. So in our clinics, what we will do is when a child with autism spectrum disorder comes in, we'll give them a free play session. So we'll arrange toys according to his age of development, and we will leave the child there for 10 minutes and we'll just observe the child. So during that free play session, most of the symptoms of the child will be expressed because we are not going towards the child to interfere with the child. So that along with that, we will be calling their name. Name call will be, respond to name call will be absent in most of the children with autism spectrum disorder. It's because they are not aware about the surrounding. They are in their own world. So most of the time they are least concerned about an alerting signal which is coming to them. So name call response will be absent. So all these things will be checked while having a free play sessions. So play is very important and they show most of the time a solitary play. So through play, social interaction is emerging, communication and even the imagination is emerging. So these social interaction will be impaired in the communication and imagination will be impaired in children with autism spectrum disorder due to their impoverished play behaviors. So next comes sensory aspects. Sensory means how many senses do we have? How many senses?
Five.
Five.
Pardon?
Five senses.
Yeah, we have 5 senses and 2 internal senses. Okay, proprioception and vestibular. So where my body is placed in space and balance. So that 2 are the extra senses. That is, we have totally 7 senses. Okay, so these children with autism spectrum disorders have difficulty in integrating all the senses in order to understand one particular thing. So suppose we have a cup of milk in our hand. How do we understand it's a cup of milk?
By its color.
Yeah, we are seeing it. So we are using our visual sense. We are smelling it, olfactory. We are tasting it, gustatory. We are touching, we are seeing the texture, or we know the tactile sense. So we have to integrate all those things in order to understand a particular concept. So everything, anything or everything, we used to integrate all our senses in order to understand one particular thing. So this integration is a little bit dysregulated in children with autism spectrum disorders. Okay, so some of the time they may have a tactile defensiveness. They doesn't like to be hugged. So or what happens is if something dirt happens in our hand, what we will do, we can tolerate it to an extent, right? These children, what they will do, no, they will just wipe it off in their clothes, or they feel like it's very irritating for them, they just want to wash it out. So that type of tactile defensiveness will be there. It can be two types, hypersensitive or hypersensitive. Sometimes what happens, even if there is a cluster of dust in their hand, they may not be aware. They will not be aware about, okay, that's a dust in my hand. But some children, they may show like, even if there's a little dust, they will just wipe it off. Even if we are feeding the child with autism spectrum disorder, or children who have this tactile defensiveness, if some of the food particles are stick on the sides of the mouth, what they will do is they will just wipe it off. They feel like they can't tolerate that. So that type of tactile defensiveness will be there. As a part of this tactile defensiveness, some of the dresses, they won't like to wear some type of dresses. Some will be wearing only half sleeves. Some doesn't want t-shirts. They will only wear shirts. So that type, so these tactile defensiveness or sensory aspect is hindering with their day-to-day activities, and thereby it has got a significant impact on the quality of life. So they don't like, some of the kids don't like to be hugged or kissed by their parents. Some, it's a reverse. They might come to you for a simple hug. If they are like seekers, they need more information, so they might come to us. So it's very tricky in order to diagnose a child as having autism spectrum disorders. And it can happen in this mixed hyper and hypo can come in one child also. So it's very tricky to diagnose a child. And like they don't like parties, or they don't like new experiences due to their insistence on sameness. And sometimes what happens is sometimes what happens is they might be under responsive to some certain sensitive stimuli. Parents usually feel like the child is having some kind of hearing impairment. Child is not responding to name calls, or the child is not responding to even a loud sound which is happening. They are more engaged in their own world. See, in this picture, you can see the child is lining up the cars and he is engaged towards that. He doesn't have that divided attention, or he doesn't have that selective attention for his mother's name call or a plate which is broken. So they sometimes they are very sensitive. Some of the children might show difficulty even in a whistle, cooker whistles, mixing sounds, even some wrappers, no. So even that sound they might be sensitive. So both type can be happen. So auditory defensiveness. Some of the time what happens is they may show a cupping up of ears. They may show this, and some of the children do this. So they are getting another type of sensory stimulation. Sometimes they have an exaggerated gag. That means even to a slight smell, they might gag it out. Even the sight of food, they might gag. So they most of the time, all these sensory issues are so overwhelming that the parents are fed up with the children's feeding. Taste, smell sensitivity. Most of the time, they will be so choosy that it's very difficult for the parents to prepare a meal for them. They may not take sweet, They might not like a texture wherein a curry is mixed with the food. So when they give them, they used to gag, or they will not have food. They are so picky eaters, some of them. Not all. It's due to their oral sensory issues, like the sensory disturbances which is happening in the senses. We have the oral sensory issues also coming into picture, wherein the children excessively put objects in their mouth, mouthing of objects. We may see that the child will always put something in their mouth. It can be a toy, it can be their own hands, self-biting will be there. So oral sensory issues will be there, and they some of the time they may show teeth grinding. They'll always do like this. This is in order to get a stimulation in the temporomandibular joint. So that can also be seen in these children. Oral defensiveness, feeding difficulties will also be there. And some of them have postural insecurities. That means they may find it very difficult to climb stairs. They fear that they may fall down. So it's very difficult. When you take the child or a child to a park or a playground, he might find it very difficult to engage in all the rides, a seesaw and so swings. Some of the time they have a difficulty in postural insecurities. Gravitational insecurity. If we make the child do jumping and all, they may keep their feet like this. That indicates that there's a gravitational insecurity which is happening, and they're so fearful. And visual defensiveness and visual seeking behaviors will be there. What happens is, some of the time the kids used to see the tube. They used to do like this to the tube light, or some of the time they might not like it. So they will cup their eyes and they will do this unusual hand movements in order to get more information through visual sense. And once a child will comes to your OP, outpatient clinic, what they will do is usually they have a seeking behavior, visual seeking. They will be looking around the globe. So we should give them time. We should sit simply, let them settle down first. Then we can start off with our thesis part. So that type of visual seeking behavior will also be there in children with autism spectrum disorders. So how early can we make a diagnosis of autism? So American Academy of Neurology have given a 5 simple warning signs in order to see whether the child is having autism or not. So reduce babbling by 12 months, or no babbling, no gesturing or pointing or waving, no single words by 16 months, and no 2 words spoken together by 24 months, and any loss of previous, that is regression, presence of regression. These are the warning signs with which we can quickly screen a child as having autism spectrum disorders. So comorbidity along with autism spectrum disorder, they can have neuroinflammations, immune dysregulation, seizure disorders, mental retardation, gastric issues, and ADHD. Attention deficit hyperactivity can also co-occur with autism spectrum disorder. So Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5 has given 3 levels of severity. So level 1 is wherein they may require support, but they have a difficulty in initiating social interaction, but with support they can come to a certain point. Second level is that requiring substantial support. So they may have repetitive behaviors, and they may seek the assistance from a professional to a certain point of time. And level 3 is requiring very substantial support, where they will have a severe deficit in verbal as well as non-verbal social communication skills, and it's very difficult to change their actions focus from one activity to another. So this we are stuck with the nickel story, no? So once the parents get to know about autism spectrum disorders, the next question arises: why my child? Why? What can be the possible reasons? Any clue? Any idea? Most of the parents ask this: why my child is having this? Is it because of me? Is it because I didn't stimulate the child? So there are so many questions which comes into a parent's mind when they hear autism spectrum disorders for the first time. So there can be the presence of a neurochemical changes which is happening inside the brain that can contribute. So as of now, no single cause has been identified for autism spectrum disorders. So there can be the presence of neurochemical changes which is happening inside the brain. And it can have an impact. Mirror neurons, which is there in our brain, can have an impact on the children with autism spectrum disorders. That's the reason why they lack this imitation skills. So mirror neurons helps us to imitate and do a task. So that can be the reason why one of the reasons dysfunctions in the mirror neuron system. So as a result, facial body movements will not be imitating. They have difficulty in emotions, even speech language skills and theory of mind, perspective from another person's. So that will also be dysfunctioning as a result of mirror neuron dysfunctions. And another one is in genetics. So maybe some type of broader autism phenotype will be present in either one of the parents or immediate family members. So genetics also plays a major role in autism, cause for autism spectrum disorders. We have seen many clients whose immediate family members are showing the same symptoms but at a milder form. Only because they can cope up or they can regulate themselves, they are not being diagnosed as having autism spectrum disorder. So there are chances that broader autism phenotyping will be there and can be considered as one of the reasons or the causes for autism spectrum disorders. So these are some of the genetic genes which are being identified for autism spectrum disorder so far. And okay, when it goes to assessment, we can do a screening or a diagnostic assessment. Usually, when a child comes by below 3 years of age, we'll do a screening assessment using MCHAT, Modified Checklist of Autism Symptoms in Toddlers. And by that, we will be seeing whether the child is having a risk for autism spectrum disorder. If the child is showing a minimal, mild risk, we'll send them, we'll ask the parents to stimulate the child and bring him back after 2 months or 3 months. And if the child is showing medium risk, then we'll go for a diagnostic evaluation using an ADOS or CARS. These are diagnostic evaluations which we carried out. And if the child is showing high risk, we'll not wait for a diagnostic evaluation, we'll straight away start with the intervention. Okay. So early intervention is the first thing. So once Nikhil's parents were clear about autism spectrum disorders, why it is being, why their child has got autism spectrum disorder, the next step which they took is the awareness and acceptance. So they should have to begin there. Now they are aware. Okay, there is a thing called autism spectrum disorder, and Nikhil is having the symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. The next step is the acceptance. Their awareness and acceptance will lead to the first step for intervention towards a better life. That is the early intervention. How early we can give intervention to the child, that's very good. And we should have to give speech language therapy or communication training, communication intervention mainly, occupational therapy for regulating their sensory disturbance. Occupational therapists are the one who deal mainly with the sensory aspects. And in school or in the environmental modification is also needed. The way we deliver instructions to the child with autism spectrum disorder is little different. That means most of the time the children with autism spectrum disorder are visual learners. What they see, they will learn fast. They have a difficulty in listening to some aspects, making sense out of them, and then learning. But when they see one thing for one, when they have a good visual learning system, we should have to tap it more. So we can deliver the instructions more through a visual modality, which is a strong modality, and we can make them independent in all their activities of daily living. So previously, we never used to counsel parents like that, but nowadays, from past 6 to 7 years, we have been counseling parents regarding the importance of making them independent, even in the daily activities of daily life, like dressing, bathing, brushing, everything. Our aim is to make them independent, right? So we have to train them in all the activities of daily living from the beginning itself. It's not possible for the parent to be with them throughout their life. So it's better to train them at the earliest so that they can, even in the absence of parents, they can have a better quality of life. Okay. Now it's a school time for Nikhil. So
How much is the
any doubts? Any doubts? And time. Any doubts?
No,
Shall
ma'am.
I continue?
Yeah, please.
So now it's a school time for Nikhil. And once he was enrolled to school, he have a difficulty in friendship making. Obviously, he have a significant difficulty in social interaction. He will have a difficulty in friendship making and language related difficulties like constructing your sentences, talking to friend, getting a thing done, everything will be difficult for him. And self-regulation was difficult. That suppose a teacher suddenly doesn't came to a 1 hour, to an hour or a time period, he can't tolerate that. He have a routine. He have a set thing in his timetable. He needs that time. That time that teacher should come. So that predictability is not there for him. So there will be having self-regulation difficulties will also come in the picture. Executive functions will be affected in children with autism spectrum disorder. So self-regulation was a difficult task. And maintaining attention to one particular task was sometimes difficult for them. And when a teacher asks questions, answering questions in a classroom, or waiting for his turn while standing in a queue is a difficult thing. And what happens in the school, when a parent asks him what happens in school, he was not able to narrate the event. And sometimes they may find it difficult to finish tasks on time. So these are the major difficulties which they see in the school. So with the professional help, they can function better when compared to without seeking a help. So as a speech language pathologist, we can help them in getting this predictability, how to regulate himself, and the occupational therapist can help them in regulating the sensory disturbances which is happening to them. So this is a visual schedule which we usually use with the children with autism spectrum disorders. It's, you can see most of the things are depicted as pictures. So once it is finished, we'll give them a tick mark. It's finished. We have to give them a clear-cut idea that that activity is finished. We have to move to the next. So this is one visual schedule, and we have some more other like AWAS or AAC, augmented and automated communication system, which we usually use with children with autism spectrum disorder to communication. So intervention, it goes in as a step. For early intervention, we usually focus on family assisted therapies, wherein the parents will be there inside the therapy room, and our major aim is to empower parents and building them as a co-therapist. And when it comes to school, we have to simulate a school situation so that the children will find it easy to transit to a school. And those who are going to school may be lacking some amount of social skills. So for that, we have to give another set of training, that is social skills in how to build a friendship, how to clarify their doubts, how to behave in a classroom, how to be in a group. So all these things comes under the social skills. And for adults, even after high school, some of the children are showing a tendency for school dropouts. So for them, we might have to give them an add-on programs like computer assisted learning programs or things like that. some are excelling. Even we know some children who are doing very well, and even they are placed in the banks. So that type of individuals are also there in this spectrum. So it's if you're seeing one child with an autism spectrum disorder, you're seeing one child with an autism spectrum disorder. So you can't relate the same symptom to another child with autism spectrum disorders. So, so with this, I am concluding my talk. And if you have any queries, please ask.
Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening our knowledge and changing our insights on autism. Now, if anybody has any queries to raise, you may please unmute your microphones and do so. Veena ma'am will be delighted to clarify it. Ma'am, I have a question.
Please.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yeah, you can ask.
Ma'am, can somebody have autism and can it go unnoticed? Like the person will have autism, but he doesn't like particularly show any signs, symptoms. So can it be like not diagnosed? In some people, is there any case like that?
Some that's like autism, broader autism phenotype. It's like there are some signs which are so subtle that he might be sure they might go unnoticed. Why nowadays are increasing? It's because parents or the people around us are more aware about the signs and symptoms of autism. Previously also there was the same amount of autism spectrum disorders being there, but it was not identified at the time, at an early time, and not given intervention. They might have gone as just like a intellectual disability or some type of disorders. But there are high chances that subtle autism symptoms are not being recognized. So some of the time it happens like some might be having a little friend. They might not be having friendships. So they may not be having friends. They might be introvert. So we'll feel like, okay, they are introvert. We'll leave them like that. But there are high chances that there will be some subtle signs of autism spectrum disorders. Even adults, some of them are being later diagnosed with autism spectrum disorders. Since they are not able to work in a group, they have consulted with the doctors and they have consulted with the professionals and they have got a diagnosis. So that can also happen.
Thank you, ma'am. Just a follow-up question. Do autism develop afterwards, like in teenage or something like that?
Nikita, you're breaking. I'm not able to hear you.
Ma'am, am I audible now?
I think, Nikita, you can drop that in the chat box.
Sure, ma'am, no problem. Does anybody else have any queries?
Ma'am, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Ma'am, women who, women who tend to have pregnancies in the later stages of their life, like after 40 or 35, it is said that children born at such an age may have a higher risk of developing autism and such learning disabilities. So, is this of any substance?
Usually, children, pregnant ladies getting pregnant after 40 or 35, they're prone to have more of a genetic disorders like Down syndrome or other syndromic conditions can happen. Autism, we didn't find any significant increase in after age. It's as age progress of, with the pregnancy, we didn't find any such findings. But after 35 and all, we usually tend to say some genetic disorders like Down syndrome or syndrome conditions can always happen.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Nikita's question is like, ma'am, does autism develop only at birth or it can develop later on life also? It's like usually everyone have a tendency of developing autism spectrum disorders, but it's our genetic makeup which determines whether we will express that phenotype or not. And to an extent, environment also plays a significant role. Like during the first 3 years, which is considered as a critical period for development, during that period, if the child is not getting adequate amount of stimulation, both in speech and language stimulation and the sensory stimulation, there are high chances that the child can show the symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. It might not be entering into a diagnostic category of autism spectrum disorder, but they may show the risk for developing autism spectrum disorders. Like most of the nowadays, we are seeing more cases who have got a screen exposure. After COVID-19, it was like it was coming like a what? It's coming like a tsunami with the screen exposure. Most of the time, children below 2 years or 3 years are exposed to screen for more than 4 hours a day. They are not interacting with other peers. Their parents might not be having sufficient time to spend a quality time with the kids. So they're lacking that social interaction. They're only watching TV. And to the TV, what they have to speak, they doesn't have to speak to the TV, right? So they lack that communication skills and peer interaction. It's a question nowadays, and the social interaction is affected. And as a result of the screen watching, what happens is they have a short attention span. When you are looking at the TV, you can see it's fast moving. Every scene is moving very fast and it's very colorful too. And so the kids who are tend more towards a screen doesn't like a human interaction or doesn't value a human interaction. So that environment can also play a significant role. Due to prolonged screen exposure or due to prolonged inadequate stimulation, there are high chances that children can show symptoms of autism spectrum disorders, but they will not be showing the actual trait of autism spectrum disorder. So these kids who are showing symptoms, we can give them interventions and we can bring them back towards a near normalcy.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for clarifying the queries in the best way possible. May I now invite Ms. Deena Das, Chairman, the Dalby College of Pharmacy and Research Center, to speak a few words. Ma'am, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Nikita. Thank you, Veena Madam, for such a informative and wonderful session. Because we normally observe all at the health days, but not Down syndrome day or autism day. So this year we have made it sure that we need to do this because it is very important to get ourselves aware about it and then maybe support others also who are really in need to understand what can be done and how they can support their children. So that is why we were actually looking for a person who can support us in this. And it is that time Ms. Remya of the Dalby Direction Center, she referred that you are a quite eligible person, maybe a very informative and very experienced person in this field and can definitely guide us. So I have to thank Remya also in this occasion for referring you. And Madam, actually for me, it was a very, very, very informative session because we are working with children right from the age of 2.5 years to up to the college students. We have schools as well. So most of the time we encounter so many circumstances like this where the parents are really confused and even teachers also. They are also quite unaware to identify what is the real problem with the child and how can they support or tackle the situation. So I think some of them have missed it because all of them have not joined the conference, maybe because of the heavy rain here. But I think they should have listened to it. That is what I felt, because personally I gained a lot of insights on this, and many faces which I see daily came across when you were narrating few examples. So it was such a very good session for us, and I believe all the 60 of PharmD students and all the participants might have also benefited out of this seminar. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Dina ma'am. And I would like to welcome you all to National Institute of Speech and Hearing. Anytime you can drop in, and what you have to do is just send a mail to Niche Info that people are coming. You can come and visit our college and infrastructure, and we have an interactive session even over there. No issues. We'll be celebrating this Autism Awareness Month from the Monday. So for 1 month, it will be there. And even after that also you can drop in at any time, and if you have any queries, please you can mail me up. I'm leaving my mail ID over here.
That's really nice to know, madam, because we were actually planning about that, to visit any of the centers which are really supporting in the autism care and Down syndrome children also. So I think if Nish has an opportunity, that is the most ideal institution to visit, and we will be really happy to do. And our children, I mean, we have the PharmD interns who are doing all these activities this year. So we will be definitely coming after contacting you.
You're most welcome, ma'am. Even you can get, we have a neurodevelopmental sciences department. So wherein we'll be dealing with global developmental delay, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, learning disability, autism spectrum disorders, ADHD, and social communication disorders, and child language disorders. These all comes under the neurodevelopmental sciences department. So anytime you can pop in, you can come, and you can use the resources. They're very welcoming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for patient listening, and thanks all the brilliant students who are over there. So you can also do many things. Nowadays, pharmaceutical interventions are also given for these children with autism spectrum disorders. So you can also do more research on this aspect. So usually risperidone or antipsychotic drugs, seizure-related drugs are being given to them. So you can, autism spectrum disorder is a vast area where you can do more research, and there are less number of papers, I think, in pharmacology related to autism spectrum disorder. So you can do that. And if you need any help, you can contact us, no issues.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you, Dina ma'am. Thank you, Veena ma'am as well. Next, I request any participant to share a quick feedback on today's event. Any participant?
Hi ma'am, I really enjoyed your session, and you started the session with a story which made it more interesting to us. And there were so many things which we are unaware of, like how can we identify a kid with who is at risk of developing autism spectrum disorder, and different types of behaviors shown by a kid with autism, and such like there are so many things, regarding the diagnosis of autism. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you for a great webinar.
Thank you, Vaishna. Would anyone else like to share a feedback as well? Thank you. Moving on, let me invite Jofi Samuel from 6th PharmD to render the vote of thanks.
Good evening. Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. It is my honor to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks to all those who made this program a success. So on behalf of my institution, I would like to offer my utmost gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Ms. Veena Mohan, for her excellent presentation. I hope that the knowledge we have gained from this session will help us create more awareness about autism spectrum disorder. And I thank you for your generous offer to your your generous offer of visiting Nish, madam. I would also like to thank our chairman, Ms. Deena Das, for her constant support and motivation in conducting this webinar. I'd also like to thank our principal, Dr. P. Manoj Kumar, for his guidance and moral support. I'd like to happily express my gratitude to the coordinators, faculty members, and students for their hard work in successfully organizing this webinar. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the students for their active participation. And I once again thank everyone for their time. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Geoffrey. May I request everyone to rise from your seats for the National Anthem.
जनगणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जाए तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Once again, thank you everyone for taking time off your schedule to be with us today. Thank you and have a great weekend ahead.
Thank you.